Hi, Aaron. Hi, Selena. I'm the one expressing as Nimesh. So again, thank you for all the interactions we've had. It's been amazing. That the trajectory of how quickly certain movements happen in life. In certain instances, you can just see it. So thank you again. I drafted my question on the thread, and then I figured maybe I'll just check on one conclusion I was able to draw, just make sure it lines up with the question I'm asking. So, we've heard it many times in many ways, right? Resistance breeds persistence, right? Anything you resist, you're essentially putting your focus on, and that it has a compounding effect. Yep. And so in Conversations with God, there's a sentence, right, that says resistance. What is that? What did I write? What you resist persists. But then the second part of the sentence is where I think the last 2 weeks kind of came through for me, is what you look at disappears.
Yeah.
Right. So and so that looking at it is essentially the fact of just be the observer of what is arising and sort of be one with it to an extent. And that made sense, especially in moments of joy, right? Okay, focus on the verbing, as you said so eloquently. it makes sense. But I wanted to just go back to like our addictive tendencies, right, with the same thing, right? And I was re-listening to that video from last week, and there's one thing that you said that really hit me, was that every action, every experience of life is divine, right?
Yes.
In my mind, initially, I was, okay, there's an ego's way of living, right, and creating, and then there's a divine way of living and creating, and depending on where your awareness is, and that kind of got scrapped with that one statement that you made, saying every flow is divine. So then what's really happening is that when that creation is here now, the reality is here now, but when I look at it through the filter of my senses and my subconscious, that's where the distortion is happening, right? Like an addictive tendency to eat junk food, for example, right? A lot of us just unconsciously we eat it sometimes not. It is still a divine vasana of sorts. It comes up, but because I have a distortion somewhere, and this would be like, I guess, attachment to it, it would create or distort that divine element. And now I have a sense of an addictive sense of wanting to eat something that I know is harmful, right? There's a sense to experience eating junk food. So then what is that thing that we're supposed to see that we're not able to see because of our belief system, right? Whatever that outcome is.
Well, so in the Law of One, Ross says, keep in mind that it is impossible not to serve the Creator, because the whole universe is the unmanifest self being made manifest and knowing itself through its manifest forms. So this is why God is in the food addiction. God is also in the wars, the abuse, the horrible things we see on earth is also God. But it's God, we could say there's either God in awareness of itself or God in ignorance of itself. Those are the only two possible states to be in, really. And not even ignorance, right? Because you never can be ultimately other than that. But in the play of the universe, we could say there's really just two states, right? This is what A Course in Miracles says. Many, great teachers have said this. Jesus said this: if your eye be single, whole body's full of light. If it's dual, full of darkness. So there's just two states, right? But it is still God allowing those states of darkness and ignorance to happen, because it's all ultimately just data that comes back to the source so that it can know itself in its true light. And so you alluded to this when you said, what is it behind the addiction or the craving that's really driving it? We know that an illusion is anything that depends on something else in order to exist, or anything that is not self-sufficient. shining by its own light. So always keep that definition in mind when you think about these questions. And it starts to become pretty clear that an addiction to anything is an illusion or an illusory state of consciousness, because what is back of that is the desire for God. It's every living being's desire to know myself, to know the source of all existence. And so the ignorance of my true nature outpictures as cravings and addictions and longings and desires and all other distortions. But behind all of them, driving them, is the desire for God. So the awareness of God is bliss, nothing more than that. So the depth of our own God realization determines our level of demonstrating these truths in time and space, whether that's healing sickness, transcending an illusion in our mind. Everything comes back to the same one principle, which is, I am the truth. The truth is in me. I and my Father are one. This realization alone is the satiation the soul is looking for. But to the degree that the soul has not become aware of that, it will search for that satiation in things and objects and outcomes, right? And so you also said this when you began your question about when I'm sitting in meditation and the mind gets noisy, it's just going to one of those three beliefs, meaning the mind is just going to look for something. It's going to say, what am I lacking? Or it's going to say, what do I desire? Or it's going to say, what am I in control of right now or in my life? Lack attachment control, lack desire control. That's it. It's not capable of making any other thought than one of those three things. Many variations of each of those three thoughts, for sure, infinite really. But the core, when we get to the core of what it's wanting, it's a lack, an attachment, or a control. And that's all the three different kinds of ignorance of myself. So that's why we focus a lot on these three beliefs in 4D University and in these calls, because this is really the only thing standing in the way of that luminous self-realization. I am the Christ already. And that realization satisfies the soul. Addictions are annihilated in that realization. Cravings, longings, desires, sadness, anything is vanquished instantly in the light of that truth. So if I'm not experiencing bliss, it means I'm not aware of God in some form or fashion. I'm projecting God outside of me somewhere onto the food, onto the person, the outcome, the whatever. So it's always this practice of self-remembrance. And if you need to give yourself, if you feel like resisting the food is so much suffering in this moment because the addiction, the craving is so turned up, then I say, fine, who cares? You're not the body, you're not the craving. Let the body act out its craving, but you have the awareness of who you are while the body's acting out the craving. This is why I've said on many calls when people ask about addiction, I say, smoke the cigarette and say, it's you I'm inhaling, God. You are the one I'm getting high on. You are my bliss. You are all that I want. This cigarette is just a means for me to get high on you. It's nothing else than that. When you bring the mind back to that, as silly as it may seem to the ego, you keep the mind focused on what it really wants. And you can't keep the mind facing the light for too long before it sees the light. It'll try to keep its eyes closed, but eventually the beauty and the seduction of the light is too much. And the mind wants to taste what that's like. What would it be like to experience God through the cigarette? And then you start having, realizations, revelations, downloads, insights. And the more you see those truths, the less you want the cigarette. Because it's like, oh, that connection with the divine was what I was looking for. The cigarette wasn't actually it. The cigarette can't be it because it's just an illusion. Cigarettes don't exist. It's just part of the dream. What exists is my real self. And so I say, if the craving's too great to say, no, thank you, what I really want is God, then I say, smoke the cigarette while you're thinking of God. Ultimately, that is the medicine that will heal the mind from cravings and addictions.
And so I'm just playing this out in my mind, right? That I think that one sentence you just made, that it's the whole addictive process is still the desire to know that God essence. Yep. And it is just being projected outwards. So if you find the divinity, in it, and still your beliefs are still pretty active. They haven't been kind of but that's the solution. Okay, so then when you're centered and you're still saying to yourself that this is God I'm experiencing right here, right now, it provides the strength to see past the illusion, see past the the filter that we set up for ourselves, saying, okay, this was just, and that's how it gets transmuted. Because the core to releasing the addiction is so that it doesn't repeat again, and you've kind of just gone past it. And the way that would happen is once you see past it once and see that it was actually God that was desiring, the desire, the intense urging or craving of the body to want to eat or want to smoke or anything like that, it would disappear. Is what you're saying.
Yes, because it's only God realization that leads to the transcendence of anything. So if there's a thirsty man in the desert who's been traveling for days and nights looking for water, and a person comes up to them and says, "Hey, I have this mirage of water you can drink from. When you drink of this mirage, while you're drinking, it tastes like real water, and so it'll temporarily, satisfy your thirst." So the man says, "Yes, I'll take anything." So he just starts drinking this little mirage of water the person hands him. And while he's, lapping it up, he feels like he's tasting water. Oh, so good, so good. Yes. And then the man, takes the bowl away, and immediately his thirst is there still, as if he never drank anything. And so it's like, he goes, give me the water back. And so he takes it again and laps it up again. And then the water is taken away, and instantly the thirst is back again. And the thirsty man will keep doing that until he finally gets tired of that experience and says, I want the real thing. Like, I'd rather die of thirst than to keep pretending like I'm satiating my thirst. I want the real thing or nothing. And so we all have to come to that breaking point with our cravings and desires to where we're actually available for higher truth. Because again, universe honors free will. If you're chasing something, thinking that thing will fulfill you, whatever craving it is, whatever outcome it is, the universe will honor that in love to you and say, chase that illusion all you want. I'm happy to give you that experience. Because again, it's all the creator knowing itself. It's impossible not to serve the creator. Even while you're chasing an illusion in the darkness, you're serving the creator. Because once you turn towards the light, all that chasing in the darkness now gives meaning to the light. So it's not a waste. It's not wrong, but it won't satisfy you, right? So this is why Jesus said to the woman at the well, whoever drinks of this water will thirst again. He's talking about material sense, right? Material craving, external fulfillment. You will thirst again. But whoever drinks of the water that I give, infinite being, the true self, will never thirst again. But in fact, you will become a well of water that others can come to you and drink from your life, right? That's what's in all of us in potential, but it has to be realized. So every craving, every vice, every addiction is the way, the path to realizing that. If we take it all the way, if we say, behind this desire, behind this addiction, behind this vice is God realization. It's the path, it's the contrast I need to realize only I can satisfy my soul, right? Only my real nature can give me what I'm longing for. So in whatever way you want to work through that catalyst, whether through yoga or through boga, whether through, meditating a lot and renouncing desires, or through the path of fulfilling your desires, trying to burn up the karma quicker, it's both equally valid as long as you know and hold in your heart all the time, I am the truth alone. Only I can satisfy my soul by realizing I and my Father are one. That's the ultimate thing the soul is longing for. And so you can understand this very easily by looking back at any experience in your life that seemed to be challenging at the time, and you may have complained about it and griped about it and resisted it. But now it's one of those things you look back at and go, wow, man, did I ever need that lesson? Am I ever so glad that life brought me that difficult challenge? Because, man, it brought out my courage, my empowerment, my faith, whatever, right? It gave me some gift of my own true nature that I was blind to before that challenge. That's what is always happening, right? In any moment of suffering, through any vice, through anything at all that seems to be darkness or illusion or ignorance, it is the contrast we need as innocent beings who are just learning about who we are. It's the contrast we need to see who we are. You could say that the devil is like the mirror that God holds up to itself to see itself. So that's why Ra says the universe, the creator doesn't blink at the light or the darkness. They're both equally valid in that sense, because one is the mirror, the other is the reality. But you can't know the reality without the mirror. Does that make sense?
Yeah. Yeah, no, absolutely. And it once transcended, I guess it's easy to see that. But like, when you're struggling with, for me, it's food, right? That, you see a cookie and, type 2 diabetics eat like sugar, right? Craving, like,
Right.
no, I shouldn't have it. And there's always this tussle going on. And it's not a last week thing, or, this is years and years and years. And I think what you said just hit a home run. Was, when it's happening over and over and again, there's a tendency to build frustration in the mind as to, this yin yang or yo-yoing going on between wanting it and not. But just if I recognize that it's happening because I just need this experience and live with it in God realization, and just keep repeating it, because the issue with the addiction isn't that moment. It's the repetition of it over and over again, and you can't break through, right? That just, that just gets you. And so just stay within that realization. And if that realization, so just one follow there. So if that realization isn't, it takes time. I guess it doesn't quite just break free.
Yeah, it sets in gradually, we can say.
So it'll take time. And while that's happening, I think the wisdom to see through it as, oh, this is just love, an expression of love, that, the expression of trying to achieve the divine, and being able to actually see it, like you said, like, how do you see war or whatever's happening in Iran, and be able to see still an expression of love through all that wisdom is needed. But how do you even develop that wisdom when you're still in the trenches?
Yeah.
Does that make, I don't know.
Yeah, let's just make it simple, right? All we're saying here is to take every single thing back to the most original point of its inception. And so we talk about this on the ascension spiral, right? Gross purification is the physical level, subtle purification, mental level. Causal purification is the soul or spiritual level. And that's where everything originates, because behind the causal is the great causal of infinite pure consciousness, in which nothing appears. It's the substratum of everything. So the first appearance, the first state, is the causal state, the spirit. So we have body, mind, spirit. We're a complex of these three things. So if you have the insight when a craving appears, oh, this is a physical craving towards sugar. I want to avoid eating sugar because I'm type 2 diabetic and that's bad for me and stuff. So I'm gonna try to avoid eating that sugar. We could say that's gross purification. So you're meeting it at the bodily level, which on the relative bodily level, that's true, but it's not the highest truth. And so it can't fully liberate you from that craving. You will have to go deeper than that to be fully liberated. So we say, okay, well, what's causing the addiction? It's the level of thought. It's mind causing this addiction. It's because I believe I'm lacking something, right? I'm lacking pleasure in this moment. I'm lacking fulfillment in my life. And so those thoughts make me crave sugar and food. So then we say, let's heal those beliefs. And that does a whole lot more good than just meeting at the bodily level. But to have ultimate permanent freedom from all craving, we have to go beyond even the mind and realize even the mind is nothing, right? What's ultimately real and actual is the eternal alone. So we need to go to the causal level, the spiritual level, and realize all that this addiction represents is my ignorance of God. That's it. Because if I was fully aware of God, any being who has realized God, is impossible for them to have an addiction, to have a craving, to do something unloving. Like, no imperfection arises in a being who's realized God. That's why Jesus said, "Who of you here can convict me of sin?" Like, yeah, you keep saying I'm a heretic, but who of you has seen me commit a sin? It's like, oh, well, we're all not capable of that. Like, I can't not sin. That's impossible. And it is impossible from the personal material realm. You can only transcend that realm altogether and realize I'm not even in this realm. I'm not in the material or the mental. Those are just projections, dreams of my real self. I am the perfect self in heaven, here and now. The degree to which I don't know that, I will manifest distortions like addiction. Is that more clear?
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I think the way you mentioned it, the ascension spiral, I think that's the kicker. Just knowing where I am and working in all three states, sometimes simultaneously, or sometimes if it's just at the gross level, be okay with that, right? And
yeah, you can be aware of what level you're meeting this distortion from. And that doesn't mean let's just skip over gross and subtle purification, try to go right to causal. It usually doesn't work like that because the gross and the subtle distortions are so heavy and just pulling us down to those levels that maybe we do need to do some work on those levels so we can open up some space in us to have the bandwidth to realize I am the source, right? So if we don't have that ability to just go straight to the causal level, then yes, let's do a juice fast, a juice cleanse. Let's do some physical stuff to help the body. Let's practice mindfulness. Let's meditate. Let's practice the 3 beliefs of ego. Totally all valid. I'm not making any of those things invalid. I'm just saying they will have to lead you to another step. You know, it's one step to the other. And the final truth is I am that. And the degree to which I don't know that allows distortions to come into the illusion, right? Into the dream.
No, absolutely. And I can at least attest to, there have been moments when that the urge is so intense, but just for that one brief moment, if I'm able to get centered or stay centered, you can see it disappear. But then suddenly it just comes rushing back to you. But I think that's more to do, that belief has to be fully integrated to the whole goddess.
Yes. And that's also, Nimesh, a testament to the limitations of the physical vehicle itself. This is what I'm not the doer means. It means that if it was really up to you as the fully autonomous, self-controlling entity, you would obviously stay in that state, right? You wouldn't leave that state of God realization, but something else seems to make you leave it. And in 4DAP, that's what we teach about, is that thing that seems to make us leave these states is the limitations of our nervous system, of the physical and subtle bodies that need to be upgraded. So while we're doing all this amazing spiritual work, we can also be upgrading the physical body to speed up that evolutionary process and continue to increase our capacity for divine truth. And then we notice we're able to hold on to those vibrations way longer and return to them way sooner. And it all just seems to be happening much more effortlessly without so much, effort all the time. It just starts to become a natural state because we've actually upgraded the nervous system to be a capable host of it.
Oh, great. Thank you. Thank you so much, Aaron. That was very, very helpful.
Awesome. And I'll just say, Nimesh, while you're here, I love to see the level of sincerity and passion you have to know truth. When I talk to somebody like you and many others on these calls, I'm like, this is somebody who has the winning lottery ticket in their hand. They may not know it yet, but when you have that devotion to your real nature like you do, you're in the fast lane, my friend.
Yeah, no, and it's because of teachers like you. I mean, it's, as I said, the last 3 weeks, just those brief interactions, you can kind of see that trajectory changing because the right kind of thinking is being inculcated too. And the meditations are profound. My God, I mean, some of these meditations, I don't know how you come up with them, but it's the right thing at the right time.
I love to hear it, man. I love to hear it. Thank you.
Thank you.